The time is 9:40 and you are listening to News and Views on Salam Media. I'm your guest host, Dr. Smeya Hendricks. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our next guest. It's Naeem Jeenah, who's the senior researcher at MISTRA, and we are talking everything that's happened over the weekend. Thank you so much for joining us, Uncle Naeem.
Thank you, Sumaya. It's nice to hear you introduce yourself with Doctor.
Yeah, it's
Finally.
nice to introduce myself that way as well. So you would have obviously seen this heroic welcome that greeted former Ambassador Ibrahim Rasool. What do you make of the welcome, especially also against the backdrop of the presidency urging for restraint on that front?
Okay, I think Ibrahim Rasool is from Cape Town. It's his constituency. The ANC or the tripartite alliance there, it's part of where he has lived all his life, etc. I guess it's expected that they would want to give him this kind of a welcome back, number one. Number two, that his comments and the aftermath of his comments really fed into a kind of feeling in South Africa about the pressure that's being brought to bear, or the attacks on South Africa by the Trump administration. And so a big part of that welcome was a message to the US administration rather than about Ibrahim Rasool. I think that was expected. I think it was unfortunate that we had the kind of call from the presidency, from the president's spokesperson, not to be too critical of the US and not to give him a hero's welcome initially, etc. The presidency should be a little more attuned to the feelings on the ground.
Mm. So in that fiery speech that Ibrahim Rasool gave, I think one of the things that stuck with me is that he spoke about how the relationship between South Africa and the US transcends government relationships. And it's also about the citizens, the relationship between citizens. And as we see these groups like AfriForum and now I think Cape Independence as well, and maybe other groups wanting to embark on this voyage to the US administration, what is it that civil society should be doing? Progressive civil society, in terms of building alliances with civil society in the US?
Well, I think there's a few things. I mean, for one thing, that the next 4 years, the government-to-government relationship is not going to become any easier, I don't believe. People make it sound as if Ibrahim Rasool's comments in that MISTRA webinar were what upset the relationship. I mean, Trump's executive order came before Ibrahim Rasool's comments. The story about AfriForum, etc., all that came before before Ibrahim Rasool's speech and his comments. So the next 4 years, no matter who the ambassador will be, in terms of government-to-government relationships between South Africa and the US, they're not going to get any easier. But that doesn't mean that there are no relationships. So, the one obvious thing, and I say obvious because everyone talks about the economic fallout. The one obvious thing is, relationships with American businesses. And there are indications now that American businesses that have interests in South Africa or that trade with South Africa have already been trying to find ways in which they might be able to circumvent any possible pressures by the US administration. So whether we kicked out of AGOA or whatever, they want to make that kind of a transition as smooth as possible so it doesn't affect business. I mean, they're not, not saying that they very altruistic about South Africa. They're concerned about business. So that's the one level. But the other level, I mean, the African American community in the US has historically been very supportive of the anti-apartheid struggle in South Africa, currently very supportive of the Palestinian struggle, for example. It's in a sense a kind of natural ally for South Africa. And I think that that's another area where relationships need to be built. Then you have, for example, the academic and scientific community, both in South Africa and the US. South Africa scientific community has suffered a little because of the withdrawal of USAID. The American scientific community is taking huge cuts as a result of Elon Musk's madness. There are opportunities for the two to reach out and build relationships with each other. And then, of course, at the levels of social movements, people's organizations, women's movements, etc., all of those things are possible. And I think that the current conjuncture provides us with the opportunity to focus a little more on that rather than just on government-to-government relationships, where, frankly, I don't think we're going to make much headway in the next 4 years.
So you alluded to this a few times now. I mean, is it really just an impossible task for the next ambassador? What can they meaningfully achieve? Obviously, there'll be a lot of eyes on whoever gets selected.
Well, I think what the next ambassador can achieve is just keeping things on an even keel. I mean, I don't see that that the access of the next ambassador, whether it's some of the names being thrown around, whether it's a Tuli Madonsela, a black woman, or whether it's a Derek Honeycomb, a white Afrikaner man. I don't see that that the access of that ambassador to the American government is necessarily going to improve. Ibrahim Rasool wasn't just kicked out because he was Ibrahim Rasool. He was kicked out because he represents South Africa, and South Africa needs to be taught a lesson. The executive order that was issued by Trump weeks ago wasn't because we had Ibrahim Rasool there as an ambassador. It was because Trump has an agenda against South Africa, Trump and Musk, I should say. And, they're hangers on like Joel Pollack, who wants to be the next ambassador to South Africa. So the next ambassador, needs to do two things. One is at the government level, try, but just, keep his or her head below or just above water. But at the same time, find ways of reaching out both for the embassy as well as for South African civil society to areas of American civil society that might assist us in building those relations.
Mm. So obviously, a lot of this discussion we spoke about the South African ambassador to the US, but do you have concerns about whoever the US will choose as an ambassador to South Africa?
I think we should be concerned. I mean, the person who's campaigning vigorously for this, Joel Pollack, former South African, now editor of Breitbart, this extreme right-wing website in the US, which is, he wrote and published the article about Ibrahim Rasool's comments, on the basis of which Marco Rubio decided to PNG Ibrahim Rasool. So he's been campaigning, but then he campaigned in the first Trump presidency as well, and he didn't get it. So he might or might not get it now. But if it's someone like him, who clearly has a strong agenda against South Africa's transformation, I think that that could make things a little difficult for us here, because he's going to put lots of effort into supporting groups such as AfriForum and all of these right-wing nutcases in South Africa.
So just to end off, so we have a theme of hope that's running throughout the show. And, there's a lot that one could be cynical about right now, given everything that's happened, and just hopeless. But what about whatever's transpiring? What keeps you hopeful?
Well, on this particular issue, a lot that keeps me hopeful. I think that this Trump presidency has thrown up many opportunities for not only South Africa, but others as well. And I'm not talking about relations with Americans, but the opportunity now to build stronger alliances and a stronger global South bloc, because the global South needs to protect itself against this massive bully. And at the same time, relations with other states. For example, Europe. I mean, who would have thought a year ago that European states would support an African state against the United States? Which is what happened with the G20 issue. When Trump said he's not going to come, when Marco Rubio said he's not going to come and didn't come, European ambassadors in Pretoria got together and issued a joint statement supporting South Africa. who would have thought that would happen a year ago? I'm not saying that the Europeans are angels or that they won't drop us at a moment's notice, but there's a window of opportunity here that I think needs to be exploited in order to create a kind of block that moves towards or moves us as a world towards a more multilateral world where the United States is no longer this all-powerful bully that can tell everyone what to do and make sure that people do it.
Hmm. Naeem, Jeenah, thank you so much for sharing your insights on news and views this morning. I'm your guest host, Dr. Sumaya Hendricks, so we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much.
Assalamu alaikum. Jazakumullah khair.
Wa alaikum salam. The time is 9:50, and we have 10 more minutes together. I'm so grateful to have had this time with all of you, and thank you so much for all the comments and everyone tuning in. We're now going to be heading to an ad break.